More than others.
Amen, Chairman. You wanna...
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the blessings that you have bestowed upon us, all the things that you've given us that we need, and sometimes holding back those things that we think we want. In due time, you'll give us all that is necessary. Bless the members here, all that are gathered, especially to benefit fellow Georgians and Americans. Bless us each day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we have several bills, and our first bill we're going to go on is sub to House Bill 1018 by Representative Jason Ridley. Mr. Ridley, the floor is yours.
Chairman and members of the committee, I'll be using LC 550207S is the one you have. This House Bill 1018, also known as Georgia Firearms Industry Discrimination Act. No, Non-Discrimination Act. I'm already in trouble already. And let me tell you kind of where this bill came from, and I'll kind of go into some details. Whenever you buy something at a store with your credit card, debit card, or anything like that, there's a merchant code that they use, a merchant category code, actually. And so what that code does is it's a 4-digit number, and it tells, like, if you're buying it at a general merchandise store, like Walmart is listed as a discount store, or if you're buying it at a restaurant or something like that. So any purchase you make is kind of a general thing and this was kind of done actually back in the 70s is kind of when this got started. So the first number of the 4-digit will be your major category code. That means the store that you're purchasing that. The next one will be the industry group, kind of like what you're purchasing, department store, that kind of stuff. And the third number will be your industry, which could also be like a discount store. So it could be a major store, then a discount store. And then your last one will be the actual number of kind of what you're purchasing, if it's food or something like that. So just for an example, if you take a discount store, it'll be like a 5310. That'll be the discount. That'll be the category code that'll be on your stuff. So it's always been, if you bought a firearm or anything related, it's kind of always went under sporting goods. So a bank I think in Switzerland is one that kind of started this deal, and they all use this. It's called the International Organization of Standard, or ISO, is kind of what everybody uses. That's where those numbers come from. So they came up back first of the year, maybe last year. They came up with a code that just tracked firearms. So if you bought anything firearm related, it went under a code called 5723. Well, I don't care where you're at, on what side. I don't think that we need a foreign country forming a database of who and where you're buying firearms or ammunition. So that's kind of where this bill originated from, is stopping that. Mississippi has passed this bill. I think there's some others that's working on. I think Florida's got it down there. So we're going to be one of, I know of 18, I think, this year that's kind of passing the same bill. So at that, Mr. Chairman, I'll kind of go into the bill. If you look through lines 22 through 37, it kind of defines the financial records, the financial institute, and financial services according to this bill. And the meat of the bill is if you get down to line 38, it says firearm code means merchant category code 5723. That's the one that they were using to actually label that it was firearms that you were buying, or ammunition, or anything in that category. Approved by the International Organization of Standardization and any other merchant category code or indicator that a financial institute assigns to a merchant or a payment card transaction that identifies whether the merchant is a firearm retailer or whether the payment card transaction involves the purchase of a firearm or ammunition. So this bill simply does this. It protects our rights to privacy. It does not let a foreign country use this to sell off to another foreign country that we may invade. I mean, it's a national security issue, and we're having to take this up on a state level, and I think that's a little bit sad, but it is what it is. I mean, there's no way of denying that the world right now, all over the place, is in trouble. So I think this is a great bill to pass to protect our citizens and protect ourselves. And Mr. Chairman, that's kind of That's the main part of the bill. You can go on through line 71 through 90, describes any unlawful discriminatory practices and kind of what happens if you do that. And it just kind of explains, you know, that you can't use this for to sign a firearm code to anything. If you go on back to line 105, now some of this was existing language from another bill that we did a couple years ago, where it talks about recovering up to $10,000 per violation. But if you read 105 through 113 in the bill, it provides, however, there's no action shall be brought by the Attorney General under this subsection, until the person who alleged to have violated this part has received written notice, and then they have 30 days after receiving such notice to respond. Any person who's subject to this action believes a violation of this part may request it in writing from Attorney General, persuade this code. So it's not just a hammer. So if somebody does accidentally put something in, they do have time to correct it. But I think it's something important that we need as this state.
I have a question. Number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author of the bill, Representative Ridley, I want to commend you on this effort. I know that you've put a lot of time and effort into it. Frankly, I hadn't heard from anybody weighing in one way or one side or the other on this bill, but I like in lines 39 and 40 where you include, it says Code 5723 approved by the International Organization for Standardization or any other merchant category code or indicator. And I want to thank you for making it more expansive, because if somebody wanted to get around it absent that language, it gives them a tool to get around. Is that not correct?
That's right, Mr. Chairman, and I'm glad you brought that up. So if you don't have the indicator, the second part there, or indicator of the financial institute assigns, are on line 40 through 42. If you don't have those lines in there, basically they could change the number, they could change the term, and this bill becomes mute. Then you're back in here having to do this all over again with a new number, so you're just kind of chasing your tail. So under legislative council, you know, I mean, this broadened it out. That way, if something does change, we're still covered under that. We don't have to go back and do this again.
Thank you. Number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author of the bill, what has been the experience of other states that have adopted something similar to this?
So there's only been one, since this has only came out last year. Mississippi has adopted this bill. They left that one part out, line 40 through 42 that we put in there. So that was kind of, if that thing ever changes, then they're gonna have to go back and do this again. Like I say, you know, and I know some people's not, you know, they're not on the firearm side, but I just think it's a national security issue, because if you can do it for this, what else can you do it for? So I think this is kind of sending a clear message that a foreign country don't need to be tracking what we're buying or what we're doing with their money. But that's the only state right now that I know that's passed it, and maybe Wisconsin. I'm not sure if it's passed yet or not.
Okay, one more. Let's see, 29.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going, at the right time, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
Well, I think this is the time.
Motion.
Excuse me, we have a couple people signed up to speak. Thomas Weaver. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I rise in full support and approbation of what Representative Ridley's trying to accomplish in this measure as presented to you under the substitute version. I do have one small little thing that I'd like to bring to the committee's attention, if it should meet with the chair's approval. I do have the substitute version that was sent to me on my phone here, so I have the correct LC number. I believe it's on page 6 of the LC number that you're working under. Lines 127 through 129. In those lines, you name all the different levels or different political subdivisions in the state that would be also barred from creating a gun database: cities, counties, consolidated city, counties, boards, authorities. I would ask if it should be the will of the committee, if the chair, and especially if the author is so amenable, to include just 2 little words: school district. Because under this, a board like the Board of Regents would be prohibited. Other local boards would be prohibited, cities and counties would be prohibited, but school districts are legally separate and distinct. And I would like to see if the author is so amenable and if it's the posture of the committee to consider it based on the author's recommendation, should he choose to present it, if this General Assembly would, by and through its governing majority, make serious its commitment that there will be no database of this kind going on and make it clear that it encompasses school districts as local units to the same extent on par with cities and counties and the like.
Thank you for your time.
you,
Appreciate
Mr.
your
Chairman.
concerns. Next, we would have Heather Hallett. I'm not sure if I said that correctly.
Thank you so much. I'm Heather Hallett. I'm with an organization called the Georgia Majority for Gun Safety. We are a broad coalition of gun owners, parents, physicians, educators, regular Georgia citizens who represent the majority of Georgians who want legislation to help solve the problem of gun violence in Georgia. Firearms are the leading cause of death in children and teens in Georgia. An average of 190 children die by firearms each year. And nationally, we are in the bottom third of states in terms of our rates of gun violence, and that is in a country that's an outlier throughout the world in terms of developed countries. That's who we are. I think gun violence is a real problem.
Yes, ma'am. What is the germaneness to this bill, though? We have a tight schedule, so.
Okay, so I think what I wanted to say is that gun violence is a real problem.
Right.
And the problem that this bill seems to be trying to solve doesn't seem to be a real problem. I don't think that there is a registry of guns, and I don't believe that the bill is creating a registry. And I don't believe that this is a current practice in Georgia. I don't believe that we are currently coding these purchases. It was just a suggestion by an international body that provides guidance to organizations. So I don't believe that this is a current practice. And I am just up here to say, I really hope that the legislators who are here are solving real problems that are facing Georgians. And this seems to be a piece of legislation that is addressing a problem that's not actually affecting the lives of people in the state. So that is what I'm really hoping that this body can do, is solve
Thank you
problems.
for your concerns. We appreciate you being here. 26.
I guess, Chairman, I don't want to take too much time, but I appreciate the lady's opinion. But I've heard gun violence for a while. I'll remind us, guns are inanimate objects, and our problem is a people problem. Okay? Is the conscious decision of someone to take another life or to harm another life. And I don't want somebody else's false reality to come here and to start to look at what is real and what is the truth. Second of all, I think this is an issue. This is an issue that is being discussed at Congress, and they are bringing in the heads of the financial institutions to discuss this very matter. So to say that this is not a real issue or a practice that's going on, I think that is not a genuine or a true statement. I applaud the lady for her commitment and her passion of what she believes. So please know that. But I would want us to make sure that we're looking at and arguing on or debating on facts, not emotions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. All right, there is a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion. We second. Any questions? All aye? All opposed? Thank you for your bill. Next, we have HB 1040, Scott Hilton. Will anybody sign up for this? Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I feel compelled to let you know that while my bill deals with trigger leads, it has nothing to do with guns. So just wanted to make that clear from the front end. I'll be reading this afternoon from LC 520458S. Very good. So HB 1040, as I mentioned, deals with trigger leads, and this concept is bill idea was brought to me by Floor Leader Wade here. I'm kind of his floor leader. So the idea is you apply for credit, say a mortgage. That credit agency then gets your information, is sold off to other brokers, banks, etc. That then triggers a lead for them to start soliciting to you. And so you, the consumer, thought you were applying to your bank. All of a sudden, now you're getting hundreds of offers from all over the country, some of which look like some of the banks that you originally applied to. And so the first page is a simple definitions. Most of the first kind of lines through 24 definitions. The crux of the bill begins at line 28, and I'll kind of walk you through each of those 4 points there. So what we're saying in the legislation is that trigger lead may be allowed if you state on the front end that you are not affiliated with the mortgage lender that you originally applied to. So what we're seeing happening is if I apply for a mortgage through Bank of America, that information is sold from the credit agency to another bank who comes to me then with paperwork that looks like we're Bank of America. Hey, you're pre-approved for a loan. We want to do business with you. And so that says you can pursue that lead, but it's got to be crystal clear that you're a different institution than the one that the creditor applied to. And the second point there, you can read, fail in the initial solicit to conform with pre-screen solicitation, consumer reports, including the requirement to make a firm offer. So essentially they've got to comply with all solicitation law that we already have on the books. Point number 3, you can opt in to trigger leads. So say I go to a lendingtree.com and I want everybody and their mother to come at me with a lead. You can still opt into that, and this sort of addresses this. But for folks who have opted out of that, they say, you know what, I got my local banker, I like him, I'm applying for credit, I'm opting out of any other leads. They've got to comply with that. And then number 4 simply says you can't do a bait and switch where you've given someone a firm offer and then it's substantially different, the final product that you've given them. So that's the meat of the bill. I will pause for questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Are there any questions for the author of the bill? This being a hearing only, we will have the next meeting. If we see fit, we will bring this to a vote. But do I have any questions at this time? Number 25.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hilton, thank you for bringing this measure. I just want to get a little bit more clarity. Are all the all the credit rating agencies selling this information? Because they get paid for it, correct?
Correct, yeah.
All of them
I
doing
can't
it.
speak for all of them. I know in practice it's happening. And we've had a number of constituents. I know Floor Leader Wade and many others have come to me and said, this is a problem, especially, and I know we've got our realtors here today, and a lot of frustration amongst our realtors who are saying, man, I've got a client, they've applied for credit, now they're getting offers from all these different banks. So our constituents are feeling it. So the credit agencies are selling off this information.
And the follow-up question, if you don't mind, have any other states already passed this? Is this model legislation you borrowed from another state, or where it's been successfully implemented?
Great question. I don't believe it is model legislation. No, this is, yeah. This would be model for Georgia.
Well, thank you for your work on it.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have one more question. Mr. Douglas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a quick question. Is it just for the public? Is it also for businesses? So let me give you an example. I own a mortgage company. I do anywhere from 30 to 50 loans every month. And at the end of that month, I sell my loans to another company that's going to service the loans. Would it affect that because it's also changing hands again? They bought it from me. I hold the loan for 30 days. A company comes in and buys all the loans from me, and now they're getting services from that company as far as their mortgage payments. Will it affect them also?
No, I mean, this is when a consumer report is pulled. So by the time you're selling it, you're just servicing the loan portfolio. So there's no other transaction that would trigger a lead or solicitation here.
Okay, because when I pull their credit for, even if I do a tri-merge, they will also get, once I bring them into my office, I'll pull a tri-merge report. And we go over the report. There are also solicitations on the other end from other companies also. So how do we protect me from them?
I'll defer to the committee on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
19, Floor Leader Wade.
I think, just to my friend, great question. I think this is to specifically deal with the issue of at the application stage for the consumer, prior to them getting to the closing table and actually making that purchase or even that refinance. The other areas in which we deal with, I remember, clients calling me. They still do this. It's not quite as bad, but if you've closed your mortgage, that scenario has occurred. A deed has been filed, and then all of a sudden they get a solicitation from, a magazine company wanting them to subscribe because they've got a new house, or the door company those are all separate, different. This is just specific to the trying to solicit mortgage refinances while you're in the process of you've applied at your one bank, and that's who you want to apply with. You don't want 50 people soliciting you. And I mean, I had a realtor that came to us last year and indicated that they had a client. They literally showed me the screenshots of over 30 texts, 17 phone calls, and about 10 emails from about 5 different sources over the matter of about 1 week prior to them ever even closing. So it's and most of these are out of state, and even in some cases, foreign actors who have used technology to pick a phone number that looks like you're calling somebody in America, and they're literally trying to source data for other malicious reasons that have nothing to even do with a mortgage. So there's other nuance that this will hopefully push back against the bad actors. Great question.
Can I,
Yeah, follow up, and then I have 13. Yes.
so you're gonna stop my hustle if I got a better deal than you on closing it? You gonna stop me from trying to reach out to that person and give them a better deal?
If that person is looking and soliciting for 4 or 5 different mortgage applications, they've gone to a place that provides them multiple quotes. That's not gonna prevent that. What it's gonna prevent is if they've come to you and they've asked you and you alone to do it, it's gonna prevent me from coming to try to snake your deal when they didn't come to me to ask for an application. Does that make sense?
Even though I can give them a better deal than you gave them.
Well, I mean, I hear the gentleman, and but I'll say this: that consumer, if they choose to get multiple quotes, they obviously, we're not going to stop them from being able to meet my friend who could offer a better deal.
Thank you. Representative 13.
Thank you, Chairman. Just listening to that question is maybe totally a different thought, but that question could also be perceived that, is this basically a consumer to business situation, or it could possibly be a business to business when it comes down to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's consumer.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's what I was just trying to simplify it. Consumer to business, or is business to business affected? So business to business not affected, just consumer to business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct.
That's it.
Correct.
Thank you, Representative. Without any other questions, we have one more bill today, and the author is still sitting there. So if you would like, like I said, these are hearing.
Is anybody here to speak to 1040? I just want to. No. Okay. Good.
Yeah. We're here today to hear House Bill 1043. And I think we have several people here to sign up to speak, and I will turn it over to you, Mr. Hilton.
I want to thank the few hundred people that reached out to me in regards to this bill, most of which are behind me right now. So I appreciate this hearing. And in all honesty, this is a complicated subject and one that delves into an emerging area that I'll be the first to admit I don't fully understand. And so I've brought my subject matter expert here to be able to answer any technical questions that we have. I think most everyone on this committee has probably heard and is familiar with cryptocurrency, blockchain, and some of those things. I was surprised to learn we actually don't have any definitions or wording in code in regards to that right now. So I know there's a lot of thoughts in regards to this bill. What I love about the legislative process is kind of the consensus building that we do in and around it. I know a piece of this bill deals with some local control issues and some debates there. A bulk of it deals in many other different areas. And so what I'm going to do is just sort of systematically walk through the bill and then open it up for any questions after that from the committee. As I mentioned to start, kind of beginning at lines 35, we go through a series of definitions adding into the Georgia Code. What does blockchain mean? What does blockchain protocol, hardware wallet, node, payment network, self-hosted wallet, things like that. If you're having trouble sleeping at night, I'll let you read through those and understand what that is. Again, the meat of the bill begins right around line 70 here. And as I mentioned at the outset, again, a lot of kind of opinions either way on kind of blockchain and blockchain crypto mining. But we also have some very kind of common sense sort of language in here. Line 70 to 72 essentially says if the ability to exist, you can use virtual currency to purchase legal goods and services, et cetera. I believe some businesses are beginning this practice of accepting cryptocurrency for payment. This would outlaw in law that would be allowed. Line 74 to 77 says the government can't apply any additional or excess tax or withholding, assessment, or fee because you're using that method of payment. And then lines 78 through 82 say the government can collect tax or withhold tax using cryptocurrency. We have more definitions, but beginning line 90 to 94, this exempts folks who validate transactions. A lot of what blockchain is and mining is validating these very complex transactions. That puts the whole security around it. And so it carves out that there shouldn't be any specific civil damages for the process of validating those transactions. I'm going to breeze. I know this is a hearing only. I'm going to breeze through a little bit 125 to 129. The Secretary of State's office has come to us with some alternative language. So that portion will most likely change in a future substitute. So no need to dig into that quite yet. Again, more definitions around virtual currency, high technology data centers. And then some of the concerns that were addressed to me began right around line 150 down to 160. And what we're essentially trying to say here is if you have a noise ordinance already in place and that minor complies with the sound ordinance, you can't apply any additional ordinances that are already currently in place. Those apply to residential, industrial, and in other locations. The lines 166 to 175 essentially say, and the issue we're trying to solve for here is a lot of these folks from an economic development standpoint, they come into communities, they invest a lot of, millions of dollars to purchase a property, get set up, and then sometimes they find that once they're zoned, they get in, maybe they're already zoned for industrial, they're in complying with those industrial requirements, but then they're discriminated by having additional ordinances applied to the business. And so that section speaks to that. We have taxes, and it speaks to kind of capital gains in that section. And then there's a sales tax exemption on the final 2 pages there in regards to the purchase or lease of virtual currency and mining equipment. And that is the bill there, and I would love to take questions from the committee, except for Miss Penny. She's
Be
careful
what you wish for. I'm gonna start with 11. She's patiently awaiting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, we know that several of the rural areas don't have access to broadband. How is it that Blockstream can broadcast 24 hours a day into these areas?
Well, I think I applaud this body for what we've done to expand access to the internet in rural areas. Yeah, that's a challenge. I know a lot of these folks want to be in some of our rural communities, and those that don't have access to the internet would not be able to have these folks come in. And so this bill doesn't speak to rural internet development, but I know that's a goal that we all share, including those supportive of this bill.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned economic development. How many jobs do you see coming into the areas with this bill?
I think the folks coming up behind me will have those exact numbers for you. But these are high-paying jobs, quality jobs that, as we talk about, I live in Atlanta here. We're full. I want jobs all across the state. And so anybody that comes to me and says, I've got good quality jobs in rural Georgia, I'm all for it. And that's what this bill aims to achieve is drive business development across our state.
Chair Lady Houston.
I'm sort of confused. Are we talking about crypto mining?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're telling me they bring jobs in?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell me what kind of jobs they bring?
Again, I've got practitioners here who will be able to tell you
Can you
verbatim.
tell me how many jobs? I'm not talking about other than security jobs.
Again, I'll defer to the.
Is it not true? And I applaud you for bringing this.
Yes, ma'am.
But I've had a terrible experience in my area with crypto mining, and the noise that people lived there a long time before they came, and they've lived there, and the noise is absolutely atrocious, and they bring no money in, no jobs in, except for people that are guarding the place. Now, I don't know what they're doing there. But I've always come to the conclusion, if it wasn't good enough for China, it's not good enough for Cook County. And that's the way I feel about it. But it's all above my pay grade. But one thing, too, you've got to realize how much power they're using. And I represent a rural area. And we've built 2 reactors over at Plant Vogel. And we're using so much power.
Ms. Penny, will you use your microphone, please?
We're using so much power, we're going to have to build another one. And if you looked at the amount of power they use, and I know it's real, they go into MEAG cities. Most of them are MEAG cities where they've gone into. But when we have to build another reactor, it's going to be the taxpayers of this state that have to pay for it. And then I know in my area, as many of you know, I don't know if you don't pay your power bill in a rural area, everybody knows it. Well, when the FBI came to town, everybody knew it. And now, I was handed some papers the other day about it being national security, and when you get to that, that's over my pay grade. And that's more knowledge than I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you. 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I've got a bunch of questions. What if first of all, how would this be applicable if a county and some small cities in some areas of the state don't have all the ordinances in place? What would be if there was a local government that did not have a noise ordinance, for example? Would this be grandfathered in when one came in, or is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm hearing my friend to my right and says he's got an answer to that, so I'll defer. If you'd introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Eric Peterson. I'm the policy director for Satoshi Action Fund. We're a nonprofit organization that advocates and educates on behalf of Bitcoin mining, and digital assets at the state level. You ask a great question. This legislation is particularly developed to balance the need for rural economic development and making sure that those in those rural areas have the tools that they need to make sure that folks continue to have a high quality of life. So to answer your question, is they can write any general noise ordinance post hoc. What they cannot do, according to this legislation, is write specific noise ordinances that are only aimed at this one industry. So if they come into a town and they get zoned for an area and there isn't a noise ordinance, they can write one and say you have to be at 60 decibels during the day and 50 decibels at night for any industry, and that Bitcoin miner must meet those requirements. And in fact, states where this is passed, in Arkansas, they have gone and written that exact type of noise ordinance, and it is passed in, I believe, 64 of the 94 counties out there.
Okay, thank you for that. Then I'm going to skip over to the issue you referenced on the taxes, and I'm going to have to get you to walk me through this. On Section 6, tell me exactly what this is doing, since it's amending code and we don't see what the code, I don't have the scope of the whole code that's being amended. What's the effect of line 182 through 191? What are we doing there?
Oh, I'm sorry, you said 180?
182, where it says any net capital gain
gotcha.
or net capital loss derived from the sale or exchange of virtual currency.
Gotcha. Yes,
but
got
it's
you.
affecting. I
Yes.
don't have the code in front of me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So as you might be aware, that virtual currency goes up and down in price.
Sure,
And
it's a commodity.
And if you sell that for cash, you
Right.
owe capital gains. You have to pay that to the state of Georgia. You have to pay that to the federal government.
Correct.
As we stated earlier in the bill, it's also used as a method of payment. It is an expanding method of payment. So we're saying as long as you are using it as a method of payment and the dollar value of that is under $200, you do not have to report a capital gain or loss to the state of Georgia. If you did, every time you used it as a method of payment for $5 cup of coffee, you would have to report to the Georgia Department of Revenue that you experienced a capital gain or loss, which becomes immediately burdensome and essentially would ban you from using it as a method of payment in the state of Georgia.
What's the policy of the federal government right now on your federal taxes?
The federal government has not come with a policy on that specifically. However, that $200 de minimis exemption does mirror what is at the federal government now for foreign currency. So if you buy foreign currency and moves in price, use it to buy something, you get a de minimis exemption to $200. So that is why that $200 limit is in there. It mirrors the federal code for foreign currency. So that's essentially how we're recommending that we treat it in the state of Georgia.
And that's a fair example. But again, to the best of my knowledge, in most places, our state code follows the IRS code.
Yeah, and let me be
and
very.
This would be departing from that policy. Yet, and I'm not saying it's perfectly in line, but it would be departing from that policy, and then you would have to be talking to the Department of Revenue how in the world they would be tracking that.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons we are at the state level and looking at this legislation is because the federal government has not been able to come up with laws, and it doesn't look like they will be during this Congress. And so we want to answer that question for Georgians right now, which is if I use it as a method of payment, what are my tax reporting obligations? So, very small purchase, right? A daily purchase, no. If you want to go buy a Tesla and they accept Bitcoin, you are going to have to report capital gains because that's a significant purchase, and the state of Georgia has every right to collect tax on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 17.
Mr. Chairman, I'm over here. So it concerns me that we're doing some preemption from local governments who they don't have an experience with this type of industry, so they could not have created the ordinances and regulations in advance. But so explain to me how this is all working and why we're going to do it like that.
Yeah, this is a great question. This is a new industry. Everybody recognizes this. America is one of the leaders in Bitcoin mining. Georgia is particularly, they mine the second most Bitcoin of any state in the country. But it is a new industry. So as we think about how a local government wants to go, again, we want that balance, but we also want to provide them guidance, right? what we hear from lots of folks is there are concerns about noise. We understand that, which is why we want to put them in areas that are zoned for industrial use, areas that are already dealing with lots of noise. For example, CleanSpark, the company we'll talk in a little bit, has one of theirs next to a sawmill. The sawmill is much louder than the Bitcoin miner. It doesn't cause a problem. So we want folks to know that that's a place to put them. To your question specifically, again, if one of these businesses want to come in, they still have to go through a zoning process. They still got to go to the local government, and they can still at any point write a noise ordinance that applies to this industry and that they have to meet. The only thing that they are prohibited from doing is writing a specific noise ordinance that only applies to this one industry. So they can, again, we want them to put them in areas that are well suited to deal with noisy industries, and we also want to give them the tools to ensure that they could deal with it afterwards, but not in a discriminatory manner.
The concern that I have with what you just said is the fact that most low-income areas are the areas associated near the industrial areas. They're already home to a lot of the negative effects of our society, our civilization as it is. And so by you putting this in statute, that locals will not be able to respond to that accordingly, it gives me a little heartburn.
Again, the folks behind me will talk about they have a place in College Park that actually creates very little noise, and so it's in a rather area that is populated. I'll let them speak to that. But again, if one of these places, Bitcoin miner, did move in and were loud and creating issues, there's nothing that would stop them from lowering the overall decibel level that was allowed in that area. They simply can't say only the Bitcoin miners have to meet that, and any other business doesn't have to meet that requirement.
Thank you. We've got several lit up still. 22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may be the only man or lady in the room that needs to ask this question. Tell me how virtual currency mining works. What are you mining, and how do you mine it, and what makes all the noise, and what soaks up all the power?
Yeah, mining is quite a misnomer, so I do apologize for that. It's just how it's colloquially known. Every day we all make transactions using digital currency, right? If you go to your bank account, these things move by ones and zeros. We use credit cards. We use things like PayPal and Venmo. They all have back end that are large data centers that process those transactions. That's how that works. Bitcoin miners, the only thing they do are validate. So that they look at somebody's account and say, in fact, you do have a Bitcoin, and then you can send a Bitcoin to somebody else, and they process that transaction. They do so using computers, lots of those computers, and for processing those transactions, they are paid not by the folks that are making those transactions, but they are paid in newly created Bitcoin. So every 10 minutes, transactions are processed, and those who process those transactions are paid about 6.5 Bitcoin.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, we've got a facility about a mile from my district, and you wouldn't know it was there. It's in an industrial area. It's a big warehouse. You wouldn't know it was anything from the outside. You walk in, it's huge. They've got thousands of servers essentially underwater that are computing transactions just about every day. Pretty nondescript, like I said, from the outside.
Number 9. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm still confused about what we're mining. I have rock quarries in my district. And they find the granite under the ground, and they get permitted, and we can go right by them and watch what they're doing. I'm still just confused about what you're mining and how did you find it and what is it?
Yes, so it's much better to get the word mining out of your head and just say they're Bitcoin transaction centers. They're just data centers that process Bitcoin transactions. There is no mining. They're not digging for anything.
They're not creating Bitcoin?
They are being paid in new Bitcoin, but they're not creating it. They're not finding it. It's those are things are all euphemisms for what they're doing, and they stuck with mining, which makes my job very difficult to explain it to folks. I really wish they came up with something that sounded more like it actually was.
Thank you, number 9. I know number 9 had some questions.
Yeah, and thank you for the bill. I always appreciate innovators out there, especially in the financial world, and there are a lot of interesting things in the bill that I like. As an entrepreneur who wanted to mine Bitcoin, why should I mean, that's an entrepreneurial decision I'd make. Why should I be exempt from sales taxes on the equipment I purchase?
Yeah, so you'll notice there's a definition there of high technology data center. All this legislation is doing is putting the equipment for these Bitcoin miners the same way for an Amazon, a Google, a Meta data center. They're just classifying them in the exact same way. So it's not creating a new tax credit. It is certainly saying that equipment purchased looks like or essentially functions the same as that other equipment that makes the internet work. This is just the backbone of the blockchain protocol as opposed to the backbone of the web that everybody's familiar with today.
24.
One other thing, I tell you, I'm real emotional about this because I've visited constituents and I've heard the noise and I know what they've lived with year in and year out. But there are two things. One thing, is it true that in May of 2021 that China banned Bitcoin from mining in China? Is that true?
Thank you for your question. I don't know the exact date, but it is true that China has gotten rid of both Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, while at the same time pushing their own central bank digital currency.
Well, no, I'm talking about the mining.
They banned them both at the same time.
Okay, and it was banned from China.
Both Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right, the next thing I wanted to ask you, you talked about visiting your warehouse, that you were in your warehouse. How many workers did you see walking around? Hundreds, thousands, or?
I wouldn't say hundreds or thousands.
Did you see, you'll go on record and tell me how many you saw.
Maybe a dozen or so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we have numerous or several people here signed up to speak.
And Mr. Chairman, as
Yes.
we chatted, I've got to be in a committee meeting after this, so I may ask those presenting if they could.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, whoever's signed up, I can't. Nua Zahar. Yeah, Zaharis. I'm sorry. Could you please come and present?
Yes. Tell you what, they banned it for central bank digital currency, which that's why you need to keep that coming.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, members of the committee. Thank you, Representative Hilton. So, as you heard, that the Blockchain Act includes many provisions relating to various aspects of cryptocurrency. I'm here from the Georgia Secretary of State's Securities Division. I'm the Assistant Commissioner of Securities and the Director of the Securities Division, where our concern is protecting our Georgia investors. And this bill, raised a red flag towards potential investment fraud. Before I get to that concern, I wanted to thank Representative Hilton for his communication with our office and his interest in hearing our concern and working with us. The section that causes us unease is Section 4 of the bill of HB 1043, which is pertinent to the Georgia Securities Act. Specifically, the language in lines 124 through 128 of Section 4 would remove the division's ability to regulate staking crypto and crypto mining investment schemes. What this language does, it amends the definition of security under the Securities Act itself to explicitly exclude virtual currency mining, staking, and staking as a service as a security. We're not here to say that cryptocurrency is a security because it is not. However, the process of staking is a type of transaction that could trigger adherence to Georgia securities laws. And it's kind of like this. You know, money itself is not a security, but when you take your money out of your bank account and you decide that you want to give it to a third party like Charles Schwab so that you can put it in a retirement account to invest it, you give it to that broker dealer, you give it to that investment advisor, you invest it with an expectation of making a profit. That activity triggers securities, the Securities Act, and that transaction could trigger some kind of adherence to the Securities Act. That is what is happening in the crypto space with staking. I'm pretty much taking my crypto to a third-party platform to stake that asset, that crypto asset that I have, with the expectation of return. So basically, as the owner of this crypto, I'm offering my crypto coins as collateral for the chance, you know, for that platform to validate blocks and earn a return, you know, maybe more crypto, I don't know. And the nuance in the Securities Act is that it becomes a securities transaction when a third party is involved. Like if I'm managing my own money on a platform, that's not securities, that's just me, you know, managing my own money. But when I involve a third party with the expectation of getting, you know, a return, profit, that could trigger the Securities Act. So our division recently has many ongoing investigations on both staking and crypto mine investing programs. And to date, well, let me stop and say we have over 20 investigations in that. We've issued now, I think, our third or fourth order. But to date, with those, we've identified over 16,000 Georgia investors who have been impacted by staking and an investment way. These investors had digital assets which were valued by those platforms themselves to over $160 million. So part of our job is to talk to our investors when we are, you know, looking at potential investment fraud. So our attorneys did, our investigators did talk to them, and this is some of the things that the investors told us. The investors who were affected told us that they were told to leave their FDIC insured bank. They were told to liquidate their retirement accounts, to empty out their savings on promises that staking was more secure than traditional banks and investment products. Some investors told us that they were promised that these investments were safe, safer than it would be in your bank account or in your brokerage account. And most of those investors told us that they lost all their savings. You know, passing this law as it is drafted would shut down our ability to do these investigations and leave defrauded Georgia investors with less protections and deplete their life savings. But let me point out that it is not our position that crypto mining and staking investment programs should be banned in Georgia, not at all. It is our position that Georgians in these programs should be protected like everyone else who invests in another platform or program. So we're just asking that by removing the Section 4 language, you know, that would allow us to continue, you know, our efforts to protect Georgia investors. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have Bo Ginn with CleanSpark.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for holding this hearing on House Bill 1043, the Blockchain Basics Act, and for having me have the opportunity to discuss the significant economic impact and social impact for virtual currency mining, with a focus on my company's contributions to the states, notably and its rural communities, economic development, technological advancement, and environmental sustainability. So good afternoon. My name is Bo Ginn III. I'm a native Georgian with long-standing family ties to several rural communities in southwest and southeast Georgia. 2 years ago, I left a promising career in healthcare administration to join a Bitcoin mining industry. I came to the conclusion that Bitcoin mining is more than just an economic activity. It's an important technological advancement that brings substantial investment, innovation, and job creation to Georgia, particularly to our rural communities, for which I have a great affection. In my role with CleanSpark, I manage our Sandersville site, in a community that's embraced our innovative role and has, through its investment in infrastructure, been a dedicated partner as we bring online this week our added growth and investment there of over $150 million. A demonstration of CleanSpark's belief in Georgia as a hub for technology and innovation. At my site in Sandersville, we now contribute over $500,000 to the community through sales taxes and margins on our power bills. Yes, that's $500,000 a month to one rural community. In fact, in a recent television interview, the Sandersville city manager commented that our company's contributions have been so impactful that at some point in the near future she could see property taxes potentially rolling back to almost nothing. This is a slam dunk, a win-win partnership for everyone. Today, CleanSpark employs around 100 to 120 people in Georgia, with an average salary of approximately $62,000 a year. Most of these technological roles are in rural communities, and we expect to continue to recruit for these well-paying career-level positions as we build and maintain our footprint in Georgia. Again, I'll call out my site in Sandersville. We have over 50 employees, and we have people who have moved to the state from places like Virginia, California, and Ohio, because like me, they truly believe in this transformative power of this technology. And they simply want to be part of this growing field. On the other hand, I've got, someone on my team who just 2 years ago, at the age of 21, was living out of his car, sleeping with no work in another state. Just 2 years later, his life's completely different now because he found us. He expressed an interest in learning about this new technology, and now he's got a new career in a booming technological field and also a new place to call home in Sandersville, Georgia. I firmly believe that CleanSpark and other Bitcoin mining companies have a tremendous opportunity to improve the power grids and electrical infrastructure in the communities in which we operate. As an example, I'd like to call out our partnership with the City of Dalton and its utility. We're classified as an interruptible load in Dalton, meaning we have signed an agreement that in case of a grid emergency, we will shut off, making the power that we use available to other grid users. We earn a fixed power credit for performing this service, which supports the grid and its stability. No other type of data center can do this. To my knowledge, this is the only such partnership in Georgia, and we believe that it's setting the pattern that will support Georgia and Georgia's future of abundant energy. In fact, in our Sandersville location, in a matter of 10 minutes or less, I could shut down the entire site and release over 150 megawatts back to the grid instantly. So, Mr. Chairman, CleanSpark's efforts in Georgia exemplify the transformative potential of Bitcoin mining. We're not just mining Bitcoin, we're investing in Georgia's future, pioneering sustainable energy practices and contributing to our communities and the state's well-being. We look forward to and appreciate your support as we continue to grow and contribute to Georgia's prosperity. Thank you for your time today and for your favorable consideration of House Bill 1043. If anyone has any questions about our facilities, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. We're running out of members and we're running out of time. I've got a couple more people wanting to speak, but thank you. GMA and ACCG, y'all gonna tag team it?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Noah Rainitz with the Georgia Municipal Association.
And Todd Edwards with the Association of County Commissioners.
I think we'll be brief in our comments given the hour and given the amount of members on the committee still. But our primary concern with the legislation exists within Section 5, and that has to do with some of the preemption language that has been talked about already. We believe that the most effective form of regulation for these types of mining operations are going to be derived locally. For every one of these good examples, of which we heard a lot today, I think there's going to be bad examples, and we should allow cities across the state or counties across the state to regulate those how they see fit. I learned earlier today that you can mine Bitcoin in an underwater situation, in oil. I mean, I'm learning about this as we go through. So this is a relatively new industry, and the more we find out about it, I think we need to entrust our local governments to regulate this as they see fit. I was doing some research while I was sitting here, and Georgia is cited as almost the #1 state for Bitcoin mining in the nation. We have a lot of businesses that are coming here. This industry is doing very well, and I don't know if preempting local governments from being able to regulate this is really going to help the industry anymore. We surveyed our cities earlier this week. Out of 80 survey respondents, we had some good feedback. About half of our cities said, we really enjoy Bitcoin mining. It's something that's worked well for us. We're deriving a lot of local revenues. We're selling a lot of electricity, because I have cities that sell a lot of electricity. I also had cities that said, I'm selling a lot of electricity, almost as much as I can. noise was almost a pertinent issue with every single city that responded. And they said, we're working to regulate that on the local level. And it's going to be different for every single community and every single one of these facilities that come in. So with that, I'll yield the rest of my time to my colleague over here, Todd.
Thank you.
Thank you. Much of what I was going to be brought up was brought up by Noah and also in the committee today. The bottom line is I don't know of any federal regulation in this country that governs the land use practices of these Bitcoin mining operations. I know of no state. It falls to the locals. Should you allow local governments to treat them any differently? I don't know. We don't have the answer to that. I believe that should be made at the local level. There's continuous noise. There's a large amount of electricity being used, water consumption, etc. I would urge you not to preempt local governments in this regard. It is a new and emerging industry. If anyone, communities react, there are something that need to be done, let locals act at the local level to do so. With that, I do want to go on record. ACCG opposes this legislation. Should it move forward, we hope that's seriously amended through the process, but I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. We have a question, 13.
Chairman, well, not really for you,
Yes,
but
sir.
thank you so much. But I'm very familiar for a long time with, cryptocurrency, all the other ones and things like that. And I know that, you have the jobs coming in certain areas. However, some of those jobs, you said people are coming in from out of town, which means that you probably have, different engineers or other people, even people that can learn it technology-wise coming in. But, if this was more beneficial, for some of the local people in the rural areas, I think it would be, something that could be doable. But at this time, the way I'm seeing it is that you have the jobs coming in, people coming in from out of town. The other thing is that I'm concerned the fact that Georgia is becoming the number one place to do it. So that means before we know it, a lot of people are going to continue to come in and say, well, Georgia's the place to go. And they're going to be coming in those rural areas that need the, extra, jobs or even the extra industry. And a lot of times you have these industrial areas, and like I said before, they're near some of these older residents that's been here forever. But here's the thing, if we continue and not really regulate or do something about what's going on, too many people coming in, when we need industrial area for other industry that brings more jobs, then we're going to be in a bad situation. But that's just my concern, that when they say Georgia's the place to go, everybody's coming. And a lot of these rural areas where people don't understand blockchain, they don't understand all the different, cryptocurrencies, they're going to say, oh yeah, let's do it. That sounds good. Well, this place has been vacant 20 years or 10 years. We need something here. And before you know it, they're stuck and don't really know what to do. But that's just my concern right now.
Yeah, I think those are all valid concerns. I would say, and again, CleanSpark will have better ideas, but we've looked at Bitcoin miners across the nation. Most of the times they are hiring local and not just folks for full-time jobs. I was just in Mississippi and up in Iuka, they hired a local contractor to do HVAC and electricity. That is his biggest contract. He's been able to hire 2 more people just to do with that facility. He's not a full-time employee. But he's brought in more than $500,000, and Iuka is a very, very small town. So most of the time, while they're coming in and building these facilities, these companies are from all over the United States. They are hiring local, and they continue to do that. Again, I want to be very clear. This legislation does not prevent localities from regulating the areas in which these businesses exist. They can do it now. Nothing will stop them from doing so. The only thing this legislation would prevent is stopping them from regulating only this kind of business in only that one way. It's specific here that they need to meet all ordinances that apply to industrial areas, and we are not attempting to change that. Again, our hope is they go to that rural area that has a facility, right, that closed down, and now they put something in here and creating 10, 20, 30 jobs, plus all the indirect jobs that come with it, plus the tax revenue that is, so important to these local communities who are often losing that tax revenue as folks are moving to places like Atlanta.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we had one more speaker, Bob Scherer.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, Committee. I'll try and be brief since we're running behind a little. I'm Bob Scherer. I'm an attorney at the Southern Environmental Law Center. and I work on clean energy policy, which is why I'm before the Banks and Banking Committee a little surprised by that. But I would say I'm glad to see that in this substitute, there's removal of the restriction on the Public Service Commission's authority to set just and reasonable rates. I think that was appropriately removed. But I do still have concerns with some of the things that have been mentioned, preempting local control for siting and providing tax exemptions for an industry that hasn't been mentioned yet, that it's unnecessary. There's other ways to validate cryptocurrency that do not use massive amounts of energy. Further, it's already been mentioned that these are extremely loud operations, and that there's not as many employees as is sometimes believed. With regard to the local preemption, we think that mandating crypto being lawful in all industrial zoned areas or any industrially zoned areas is a lot broader than is being described here. As has been mentioned before, some industrial areas are next to residential, and it should be within the control of the local government to say that area is okay, that area is not. And I think this bill does prevent that. Finally, the tax exemption, towards the end, I think the section number has changed. This exempts basically all equipment necessary to set up the mine. Computers, the wires, the AC units, the generators, batteries, everything. And Georgia's already the #2 state for crypto mining without this exemption. So what incentive is it providing besides extra profit to these companies? Finally, I will add that this tax break is a new one. That's why it's a new section. And that it is very similar to the data center tax exemption that was discussed yesterday as up for potentially being removed because of the disproportionate amount of energy that these types of facilities use. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, committee members, and this meeting is adjourned.